been, let's call it, startling developments at the ANC's national conference currently underway in Nasrec, including some members declining nominations at the last minute. Allegations of vote buying have also surfaced at the weekend. The party, meanwhile, is expected to also announce the top 7 leadership sometime later today. Let's bring in political analyst Tebogo Khaas to get through some of the highlights and key moments from the weekend. He joins us via our telephone line this morning. It's great to have you on the program, sir. Thanks so much indeed, as always, for making time for Newzoom Afrika. So, at the weekend, some people are in, some are out, some never even qualified to be in the running. I wonder when the names of Dr. Nkosazana Dlamini Zuma, Lindiwe Sisulu, and David Mabuza comes up, what comes up for you?
Yeah, thank you for having me, and I must say I appreciate the opportunity. When other names, such as you mentioned, David Mabuza, Lindiwe Sisulu, and Nkosazana Zuma came up, you could almost see that, for instance, in relation to David Mabuza, he probably read the room and knew that he would not in any way stand a chance to be voted back in as deputy president of the ANC. Certainly his campaign, if there ever was, didn't take off, and it was a good decision for him just to not accept and just to avoid embarrassment. And talking embarrassment, it was equally embarrassing to see Lindiwe Sisulu accept a nomination, knowing full from the floor, knowing full well that she didn't stand a chance at all. In fact, many people were actually wondering what really was she thinking when she thought that she would be in a position to compete successfully against the likes of Pejani Chauke, Mzwandile Basina, and others who actually raised their, including Gwen Ramokgopa, who raised their hand on the TG position. And it was embarrassing to see that she never managed to gather the 25% from the floor after her name was raised or was proposed. And Nkosazana Zuma, I think it was a smart move on her part to withdraw her nomination, to not split the so-called REG ticket that is Zweli Mkhize's campaign, and make sure that it remains a single block, and thus consolidating whatever both branches might be able to play in support of Zweli Mkhize.
Yeah. What's also been interesting to note is that, the picture is as clear as mud, even as we get closer to the final results being announced, hopefully sometime later today. For one, pretty senior leaders in Limpopo, for instance, are now singing a different tune, so to speak, and, throwing their weight behind a Zweli Mkhize. I mean, Limpopo was one of the provinces that first came out in the very early stages. In fact, Stan Mathabatha, I remember, was criticized for declaring that the province is in support of Cyril Ramaphosa before delegates even met, before branches met, to decide on these kind of issues. We're now seeing some kind of potential split taking place. As far as you're concerned, and this is all speculation because the results aren't out yet, do you get the sense that the needle is moving from a Cyril second term to a Zweli Mkhize leadership?
Quite honestly, it is very hard to tell. In fact, I stopped betting yesterday when Argentina was 2-0 up, and then we saw what France came back and did. With regard to these elections, it's anybody else's guess. And quite honestly, the public seems to be very much clear about the going on in Africa. We just get on with what you decide on, but the common view that seems to be going about is that come 2024, ANC must just be voted out of power, and because certainly it is not a party that comports itself as a governing party or that has the interest of the voters at heart, and so it really doesn't matter whether it's Cyril. If it's Cyril, maybe the impact might be lesser, but certainly if it's Zweli Mkhize, we know what the outcome may very well be. It may very well be a continuation or a state capture on steroids this time around, and we know what he most likely wants to do to make sure that he covers, he saves the skin from possible criminal proceedings.
Yeah, and that's the thing, isn't it? I mean, part of what we've wrestled with, even
and regarding
go ahead.
So regarding Stan Mathabatha and the Limpopo issue, it is quite revealing that you could see that Stan Mathabatha, when he made that pronouncement about Limpopo being behind, Ramaphosa, you could see that although it was only for self-interest and nothing else, because you could see now it's becoming evident that all he wanted to do is to make sure that he secures his position as national chair and nothing else. Now when he realizes how the Ramaphosa's ticket might not be amenable to having him as national chair, you can see now the PC is going against what the branches or the members and the delegates had been advised to come and do. And that is obviously they speak right in the open. We've seen how delegates have actually come up to push back from what the PEC members, including Florence Rajilana, who is instrumental in trying to make sure that Sema Kabate gets the nod. And you can see it is just a coalition of the venal, the coalition of the corrupt, trying to make sure that they find their way in by hook or crook.
Sure. I wanted to hone in on part of what you've just said. I mean, this idea of what the sentiment of ordinary South Africans is to this particular conference. We've also had to wrestle with it as the media about, the framing of this conference, where emphasis is placed. You and I, ironically, are speaking this morning via our telephone line because you're currently being load shed, and that has an impact on the quality of the network to you. I wonder just how much of these issues that affect the ordinary South Africans had space at this particular conference, especially in a context where it feels like we're entering the business end and potentially the end of the particular gathering itself.
Fascinating, is that we haven't had the policy positions, for example, the resolutions. We haven't had anything different, or we haven't had a cogent message coming out that in terms of electricity, the problem of electricity, which faces every South African today, what is it that this conference is seeking to do? Yes, Andrew Director might be on his way out, but what is the solution? What is the short-term, long-term solution that the ANC thinks you'd be able to bring? Nothing we've heard of the sorts from the conference, unless, of course, it was done hush-hush. But those are the kind of things that ordinary South Africans are hard pressed with on a daily basis. They want to know what is it that the ANC is going to do. And unlike their opposition, if you look at the Western Cape, for example, and especially Cape Town, you can see that they've got ideas in terms of how they're going to be mitigating load shedding today and in the future. And that places the DA, for instance, the largest opposition party to the ANC, at an advantage, because people now see that in a DA-run city, there seems to be plans in terms of how they want to deal with load shedding going forward. But at the end of the day, the elephant in the room is ESCOM. What's going to happen to ESCOM? Is the ANC unbundling of ESCOM going ahead? And what are the plans in terms of the timelines? Are they being realized? And those are some of the questions that we don't see. Instead, what we hear, the feedback that we constantly get from the conference is bickering, envelopes changing hands, or bags full of money changing hands, and people haranguing their own president, which is very, very unfortunate.
Absolutely, very sobering indeed. Tebogo Khaas, always great speaking to you, sir. Thanks very much indeed for your time.